What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast.
We talk about fights, news, and more.
And today we're going to be talking about the potential fights that we want to see on the UFC White House card. And one fight that we know we probably won't see is Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones, and that's many people's favorite pick for a main event. But Dana White has been very clear that he doesn't want Jon Jones to ruin this event.
He can't trust him.
That's what he said for this special occasion, right? Since he has cancelled so many times before. So, going off that, what do you want to see as the main event for this card?
I think that there is another fight that's at least, I think, as big. Probably the biggest fight in the UFC right now that we have talked about before in a video. And that is the potential matchup of Islam Makhachev as welterweight champion, if he wins the welterweight belt, versus Ilia Topuria, coming up from lightweight. I think that is probably the biggest fight in the UFC right now, and that's the only fight, even though none of them are Americans, I think that's like the only fight that's as big as the Aspinall-Jones fight for this event. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, probably. I mean, looking at the pound-for-pound rankings, it's even bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's the biggest fight, like we've covered before, like you mentioned there, that's possible to make right now in the UFC. And that would be a very good main event. Like you mentioned also, none of them are American, but either way, it's a very, very decent main event. Probably the best one you can make right now.
It's such a big fight that it doesn't even matter. I mean, just that it's at the White House, I think that's enough for that fight.
Yeah, and it basically decides who's the best fighter of this generation in the UFC, basically.
Maybe of all time, depending on how their careers go after that fight, or maybe if one of them retires or something.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's a time to make that fight, it is in the White House card in a year, because we don't want to push this fight on too much longer, since if any of them take a loss, it's not going to have the same weight to it. So you want them to be, have the same records and both be champions when taking the fight, right?
Yeah, so it lines up with their schedules and stuff for the next year, probably, Maybe Topuria fights Paddy Pimblett in December, and Islam maybe fights JDM in November.
Yeah.
So it matches up with their timeline, with their schedules.
Yeah, if
both have enough time to prepare for that fight.
It just makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a sick matchup for the main event of the fight card. So, do you have another fight maybe on this card?
Yeah, I'm thinking of a potential matchup between Merab versus Umar, a rematch, should I say.
For the co-main.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So another title fight, that would be. And that's going off the fact that Merab wins his upcoming fight with Corey Sandhagen, which I think we all agree that it probably will do, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Umar has another fight. I don't think it would be a very tough one. And regarding the fact that he's probably the best contender in the bantamweight division, I think he's going to win it in that case and make for a good co-main, Merab versus Umar. The first fight was very close and pretty entertaining, we have to say. Two very skilled guys, more on the wrestling side, obviously, but still very high level. So I think that would be a good co-main event. Would you agree? Or?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that although it's sort of the same situation here that none of them are Americans, Merab does actually have now American citizenship, and he has been living in the US, I think, for a long time. He was like a construction worker in New York when he started out in the UFC.
Yeah.
So he does have American citizenship, and he can definitely, just for this event, probably pull up with a US flag around his shoulders and
to get the fans on side, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think they can probably sell that. They can probably sell that co-main pretty easily, because it's such a high-level fight, and Merab is a big star now in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, he's a go-to his division, right? And as you mentioned, if they market him as the American, so to speak, then it's an American versus a Russian, and they're all going to get on the side of Merab then.
Yeah.
And that's something the UFC will want as well, I think, on this kind of event, to get the fans behind a particular fighter here. So yeah, a pretty good co-main as well, and that would mean that we have two title fights on this card. What are you thinking about the feature fight? Any potential matchups?
I mean, talking about another star who isn't really an American, but who's a big at least very well-known fighter in the US too. That is Conor McGregor.
Yeah, the most known.
Yeah, probably the biggest UFC fighter maybe of all time in terms of how well-known he is.
Definitely.
Particularly in the US. And so everyone wants to see Conor McGregor fight again. He hasn't fought in a long time in the UFC. And we have a matchup here of him versus Michael Chandler.
Yeah. That's the one that they've been brewing for, pretty much 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
I think almost since they finished The Ultimate Fighter and they were scheduled to fight. That has been booked in and cancelled a few times.
Yeah.
But surely this is the time to make it.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that, you want to give... The problem with McGregor right now is that he hasn't fought for so long in the UFC and he's been distracted by a lot of other stuff outside of it. And so you can't really give him a high-level matchup because he would probably just get crossed immediately. And you want to give him someone who he has some sort of beef with at least. And him versus Chandler, that's a fight that both of these guys want. They both want this fight. And it's gonna sell, I think.
Yeah.
Just because it's McGregor,
Yeah, and they're gonna sell it. They have had beef for a very long time, and Chandler is an American as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's good to get him on there. And actually, pretty winnable fight for Conor McGregor, which I thought I would never say, because Chandler has been on a terrible run recently. Yeah. In his last fight, obviously, got smoked by Paddy Pimblett.
Yeah.
So this would be a pretty intriguing matchup, and as you say, they will sell it very well. And of course, great if you can get Conor McGregor back in the UFC finally. And as we've seen, he's even spoken to Trump before, and he's doing his whole political campaigning thing. So I think,
and also with Dana White, he actually has a decent relationship with Dana White. It seems like still.
Yeah, he sent him some DM, the one I uploaded, and Dana White responded, "I love it."
Yeah,
and that was in terms of I think regarding the White House card. So yeah, definitely a fight to make. Another one I've been thinking about, and speaking of good trash talkers, would be Sean Strickland. I mean, the most American fighter ever, probably, with how he behaves, versus Israel Adesanya too. The rematch there.
The rematch,
It was quite a while ago that they fought when Strickland dethroned Adesanya as the champ. Now they're both top-ranked contender in the division, and I just think that this is a fight that makes sense. Strickland hasn't fought since he fought Dricus the second time and got beat up pretty badly there. But I've heard Adesanya recently in an interview say that he wants that rematch to sort of wipe it off his record, so to speak.
And Izzy fought Imavov, I think in May, or was it in June? I think it was in May.
Somewhere around there.
May, on a fight night, and he lost that one.
Yeah.
So they're both coming off a loss. They're sort of in the same position in the rankings. So it does make sense. It really does make sense. And Izzy wants that fight. Strickland would probably also be open for that fight, especially on this White House card. He won the first one. I think he will be confident in winning the second one as well. And the UFC themselves will probably want this fight because its name. There's a lot of stardom in both these two guys. They've both been champions of the middleweight division, and everyone knows Izzy, everyone knows Strickland by now probably.
Yeah.
So it's a good fight for this card. I agree with that.
Definitely, they will sell it well, right?
Yeah.
Any other matchups you've been thinking about for the main card? We still have a couple of slots here.
Yeah, I think that another guy from bantamweight, an American, who recently lost his shot at the title, Sean O'Malley. I think that he can make a comeback on this card and maybe do a rematch versus Peter Yan, who recently won a fight versus Maki. So what do you see about this matchup that could be appealing for this card? Maybe?
I think it's definitely one that you want to get on there. In my opinion, Sean O'Malley is the most exciting American there is. His dynamic striking, as well as Peter Yan, even though he's not an American, has a very exciting fight style with his kickboxing style. This will be a striking match, a very exciting, very technical one. They're both very quick, very technical. I think it's a really decent matchup.
It's a really high-level matchup. Both of them have a good shot at actually winning this fight, and especially the American in O'Malley, which, they need to get some Americans probably on this card who have a shot at winning their fights. And Strickland versus Adesanya is a good one. The same with O'Malley versus Jon, I believe, at least, because O'Malley won the first one. So
Yeah, definitely. And a good idea to put it on there as well if we have the bantamweight title fight between Merab and Umar. If anyone were to pull out there, you can put in Jan or O'Malley in the main event to replace them, right? Even if it's the last second, because they've obviously been training in camp. So yeah, really good idea there, to be honest. And if we're going off the fact this card is going to be a 6-fighter on the main card today, one that I've been thinking about is we want a real entertaining fight to just open up the main card and get the hype going.
Yeah, and that doesn't really have too high stakes in it.
Yeah.
Because all of these other fights, they have actually, except maybe McGregor versus Chandler, a lot of these fights have really high stakes in them. But this fight that's coming up right now, you're gonna talk about it, but it doesn't have that high stakes, but it's still gonna be a war because of how both these fighters fight, right?
I mean, it has the potential to be an all-time classic.
Yeah.
And the fight we're talking about here is Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker, and we've all known.
It's a crazy fight, actually.
Yeah, we all know Dustin Poirier's wars with both Gaethje and Hooker, and now they are all-time classics. So to match up Gaethje versus Hooker, it can't be anything else but a banger, right?
Yeah. To open up this card, and speaking of this card, what a banger this card is, right?
Yeah, definitely. I hope that the UFC can replicate this in some capacity. And we'll see how the rest of the fights this year play out, and maybe even do an updated version to see.
By the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all from us at the Walkout Podcast today. So thank you guys for listening, and we look forward to catching you guys next week for another episode.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Goodbye.
Bye.